My name is John O'Hare. I am a police officer with the Broomfield Police Department.
Officer, how did this case begin for you?
On December 14th of 2023, I was dispatched to a welfare check at the Krug household.
Broomfield Dispatchers meeting.
Hi there. My name is Dan Krug.
Dan Krug was calling and asked that we check on his wife, Kristil.
My wife isn't responding to text messages or phone calls.
Said that he had not been able to reach her for about 3 hours.
We've had threats against us. We have both been targeted by a stalker.
Dan said that this alleged stalker had made threats to both him and his wife, Kristil.
Which is why I'm nervous that she's not answering me.
Yeah.
The first thing I did was walk right to the front door, kind of peek inside. Everything looked orderly, quiet. I gave it a loud knock. My thinking at the time was it's very possible she's not even home, so I wanted to see if I could peek into the garage. Quickly realized that I'm not tall enough to see in those windows. I went back to my patrol car and I pulled it into the driveway so that I could get my push bumper close to the garage and use it as a step up. I stepped up on it and looked in the window. I immediately see Kristil, apparently lifeless. She had some type of wound to the head.
151, send medical. I got a female down in the garage. Broomfield Police! Broomfield Police!
Immediately, I just checked for any signs of life at that point.
Does she have a pulse?
She does not.
151.
I immediately started CPR. There was a stab wound on her chest.
Send the next unit emergent, please.
As the paramedics arrived, I opened the garage door and a woman came up, and I believe this woman was Kristil's mother.
I arrived.
I need you to stay out, please.
I said, that's my daughter.
She came running up to me and said, Kristil is dead.
It's just shocking. You don't want that to be your reality.
Oh my God, this can't be true. This can't be true, can it?
It was chaos. I heard screaming coming from the top of the hill.
My house. Hey, stay back, stay back, stay back, stay back. This is my house. I understand.
I see a man come running down the hill. This is Dan. This is her husband. This man just lost his wife. And he is beside himself. I'm with Dan, and he's on the floor, and he's crying. They all just kind of said, I can't believe this happened. He did it. The stalker did it.
We were on heightened alert. We were very, very concerned for Dan's safety.
This is after Kristil was murdered. You're worried that Dan may be next in this stalker's sights.
Correct. We thought Dan Krug was next.
The community was very alarmed.
Is this a murder scene?
There's a killer out there, and we're gonna go after him.
It's a weird feeling standing there when somebody's being told, I'm sorry, but your loved one has died.
Victims advocate Heather Ates is trained to comfort those in emotional agony, like Dan Krug, who dashed home from work and learned his wife, Kristil, had been found murdered in their garage in suburban Broomfield, Colorado on December 14th, 2023.
This man has been going through a stalking case with his wife. He's being stalked as well, and now she's gone.
As investigators searched the crime scene for clues, Heather drove Dan to the police station. An officer's body camera recorded the ride.
He was crouched over to the side of the passenger door, and it was very much, I'm comforting Dan by rubbing his back.
Dan and Kristil had been married for 16 years. The couple, both 43, had 3 young children.
What did he say in the car?
In the car, he was pretty focused on the kids. He was very adamant about wanting to be the one to tell his children.
Under the command of Broomfield Police Chief Ania Hempelman, investigators were doing everything in their power to find the killer.
We immediately started doing interviews, talking to neighbors, canvassing.
Several hours had passed since Dan Krug's emotional ride to the police station. He had settled down, and he told detectives there was nothing out of the ordinary that morning.
Mornings are very routine in the house.
He said they got the kids to school, and Kristil seemed fine when he left for his job at the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment.
While I was driving, my phone dinged.
Dan said Kristil texted him, asking if he could pick up one of the kids after school. But when he texted back and asked what time, he said Kristil never responded.
And that was weird.
So weird, so out of character for Kristil, Dan called police and asked them to check on her.
I got a female down in the garage.
There are not words that can describe what you feel as a parent at that point.
It's probably some parent's worst nightmare.
These are some memories, aren't they?
Kristil's parents, Lars and Linda Grimsrud.
She was an engineer. She had incredible skills in math, sciences, chemistry, physics, but she also had the talents in the arts.
She loved to just get out and live life.
Throughout her life, Kristil spent countless hours working with her dad on classic muscle cars in his colorful garage.
We'd work on the cars, we'd race the cars. Kristil always felt very comfortable coming over here. If we needed to talk or whatever, this is where we would sit and just enjoy each other's company.
But those fun, casual conversations suddenly turned disturbing in the fall of 2023, when Kristil first told her father that she was living with intense fear.
She sat here and told me that she was being stalked, and that just shocked me. When I asked her, well, have you talked to the police?
Kristil had called the police and met with Broomfield detective Andrew Martinez.
She came into the interview room and just kind of took over and just told me everything without hesitation.
Their conversation was recorded.
I keep trying to remind myself this is intending to be terrorizing. This is intending to scare me.
Kristil told Martinez that on October 2nd, 2023, she received an unsettling text from someone named Anthony, who said he would be coming to the area and asked if Kristil wanted to hook up.
And how does she respond to that?
She did not respond.
The following day, Kristil told Martinez she got more texts from Anthony that included obscenities and said, "You should kill yourself. Don't waste my time."
Somebody who wants to hook up now is saying, go kill yourself. How do you interpret that second text?
It's a pretty extreme reaction to not getting a response.
Kristil told Martinez she knew an Anthony from her past, Anthony Holland, a boyfriend she dated for about a year after high school and into college. The two broke up in the fall of 2000. Lars and Linda say back then, Anthony made a good impression.
Very friendly, very courteous. He always had good manners.
In 2002, out of the blue, Anthony contacted Kristil. According to Kristil, Anthony never seemed to take no for an answer, contacting her again in 2005, 2010, and 2016 via Facebook.
He's like, we're meant to be together. I said, this is really creepy for me. You need to stop.
Kristil deleted Facebook and thought she'd heard the last of Anthony Holland. But then came the text in 2023.
Like, this was alarming. He's never said this kind of stuff to me before, so.
Over the next 2 months, Kristil said she received alarming message after message through text and email. They included threats to her and Dan, including this disturbing photo of Dan getting out of his car at work, which prompted Kristil to first come forward and call police. A few days later, this text to her: "Saw you at dentist. See you soon."
That suggests he might be surveilling them both, right?
Correct.
This now is escalating.
The harassment is just constant, and she's just believing that every corner presents some sort of danger for her.
To gather evidence and locate Anthony Holland, Detective Martinez was required to file search warrants with the phone and email companies. A slow process.
Getting that information takes time. Sometimes those companies are reluctant or they slow walk getting that information to you, correct?
Yes.
Kristil had been searching for Holland on her own. She hired a private investigator and eventually located him living in Utah, about 500 miles away. Kristil shared her discovery with Detective Martinez, who chose not to contact Holland.
I explained to Kristil that we wanted to gather as much evidence as possible and ideally obtain an arrest warrant, so when law enforcement does go to Anthony's door, we can take him into custody and not have to walk away.
But Laura says Kristil had been losing patience with the investigation.
She made the comment that she felt they had abandoned her, that they weren't doing things aggressively enough.
Kristil had taken steps to protect herself and her family, including installing security cameras.
And she was scared. I said, well, this sounds serious enough that you need to start carrying. You'll use one of my guns for right now.
Is this the very gun that she took with her?
That is the actual gun that she initially then carried.
Dan was also interviewed. The threats were taking a toll on him as well.
I went to the grocery store briefly on Tuesday, and someone behind me dropped a can, and I panicked. So what am I doing? I'm panicking. And I'm doing a job of protecting my wife. So I'm not doing good.
Dan told Martinez the stalker had a nickname.
We call him Kickman.
Where'd that name come from?
Kickman, Dan had told me, was because the suspect email that was initially contacting Kristil was ahollandkicks@gmail.com.
As the weeks went by and Martinez's investigation continued, Lars and Linda say the constant threats were ruining their daughter's life.
It was just heartbreaking. She was just in tears. She was just like, what am I going to do? How am I going to live?
Did she feel she was being hunted down by Anthony?
Yes.
Kristil also shared her fears with siblings Jenna Erickson and Josh Adamson.
She was terrified.
Did she ever express to either of you the fear that this man, I think, is going to kill me?
Yes.
Yep.
She said it's either going to be me or him that's dead, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure it's not me.
When Kristil Krug was found dead in her garage, Detective Martinez had only one suspect in mind.
My initial assumption was that Anthony Holland had gone to her home and murdered her.
Within hours, local police descended on Holland's home in Eagle Mountain, near Salt Lake City.
So you're alone in a house. What do you hear?
Pounding at the door.
Like?
Yeah.
Big time.
So I go to the door. I see like 8 cops. I had no idea what was going on.
Where's your ID at? It's in my room.
Have you ever heard of the name Kristil Krug?
They asked me if I knew Kristil Krug, and I told them I did know her.
She was my very first girlfriend ever.
When was the last time you talked to Kristil? Has it been a minute?
It's been a minute, yeah.
When was the last time you had reached out to Kristil?
It was around 2014, 2016.
Anthony says he'd reached out to Kristil on Facebook years before.
What are you thinking? Why would they come all the way here to ask me about Kristil?
I thought it was for that message where I said I missed her. That's the only thing I could think of, because I was like, I haven't contacted her since then.
They didn't tell you that Kristil Krug had been murdered?
No, they did not tell me.
Police were there to gather information from their suspect, not give it.
They asked me where I was that day. Can I prove where I was?
Anthony had made a purchase just hours earlier at a Kohl's store near his home.
What'd you buy?
A sweatshirt, this one right here.
And he still had the receipt. The purchase was made at 12:16 p.m. Investigators say Kristil was attacked around 8 a.m.
Turns out that was one of the most important purchases you have ever made.
Because it was my alibi. Because there's no way I could have made it from Colorado back to Utah to buy the sweatshirt. It was an 8-hour drive.
Anthony also showed police some of his employment records. They proved he'd been in Utah all along, never traveling to Colorado, as the messages from Kristil's stalker led cops to believe.
I had a bunch of receipts from my work showing the days that I worked, and they took those, took my receipt from Kohl's, and went to the squad car and made a phone call, came back in and told me I was free to go.
You have a better day, okay?
Back in Colorado, Dan was still face-to-face with investigators. He told them his theory of the crime.
So in my brain, the story that I have is someone came to the door. Maybe she went outside to get a package, and they must have come in. And she's a fighter. She is strong. She would have fought.
Earlier in the interview, Dan requested he tell the children what had happened to their mother.
Your kids do not know yet, okay?
Are they here?
They're here. Arrive in the hall.
I should tell the children.
You want to tell them?
I just don't know.
Okay.
Watching their response is just heartbreaking.
Investigators were working every angle. They checked those security cameras Kristil had installed on the house.
The doorbell camera, the side camera, and the side house camera were all manually turned off.
Except for that one Nest camera near the garage. Police canvassed Dan and Kristil's neighbors in search of anything their home security cameras might have recorded.
So I saw you had a Ring doorbell camera. Do you mind reviewing that camera footage?
Oh, goodness, absolutely.
If possible, if you guys can review the last 3 to 5 hours.
They also enlisted Randy Pilak, a digital forensic examiner with the Broomfield Police Department, to take a closer look at those disturbing messages to Kristil.
I think it was probably 4 hours, 5 hours after the murder was reported to us.
Now that the stalking case had become a murder investigation, Pilak was able to file new expedited requests for information. He quickly discovered that messages from 2 accounts used to harass Kristil had been sent from the same location.
Both came back to the same IP address. That IP address was the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, which is where Dan worked.
The messages to Kristil threatening her husband, had been sent using the Wi-Fi system at Dan's office. For the first time, detectives believed Kristil's stalker could be sitting right in front of them. Could he be her killer as well?
The entire air was just kind of evacuated out of our investigations room, and we realized that we need to focus on Dan and where he's been and what he's been doing.
Martinez, along with Detective Jennifer King-Sullivan, confronted Dan.
Who do you think killed her?
I think it's Kate. I I think it's Anthony.
What if I told you that we had already spoken with Anthony and there's no way that he was in town today?
And I have nothing. And I'm terrified to bring my children home.
What are you terrified of?
If it wasn't him, who was it?
But even as Dan claimed ignorance, the detective saw that his body language told a different story.
What were you seeing with Dan?
He took a defensive posture. He sat back in the couch a little bit. He crossed his arms, kind of like, I have nothing to explain.
I think his head is spinning, thinking about what else are they gonna find.
The mystery continues, and
It has to be that sometime.
if you were watching these facts unfold in front of you in a movie, what would you say happened?
There has to be someone else.
Moments after detectives told Dan Krug they had eliminated Anthony Holland as a suspect, Dan calmly insisted he was not the one who stalked and murdered his wife, Kristil.
I loved her.
There has to be someone else. But I don't know who that is.
Martinez and King Sullivan didn't believe a word of it and were struck by how stoic, how unmoved Dan was.
He had no reaction and really no explanation.
Help me make sense of it.
I don't know, I'm not the one who does this. I don't have a narrative or a story that I can offer you.
Within minutes, Dan Krug had gone from sympathetic victim to murder suspect.
I get the narrative you're putting together, but it alleges that I would do this to my children. I love and adore my children.
It's a pretty frightening idea that the biggest threat to you and your safety is actually living in the same house as you.
We need to process you for physical evidence, okay?
He knows that we're on to him. We just didn't have enough evidence at that point to take him into custody.
Walk down to the lobby.
On his way out, Dan kept insisting the real killer was still on the loose, and he made a desperate plea.
I just want he took my children's mother for Christmas. They're never going to get over that. I don't care if you capture them. I don't care if you kill them. Find them. Don't just assume it's me. Keep looking.
When did you find out that Dan was now a person of interest in this case?
I think at his interview, so that same day when they held him, and they held him pretty late.
An autopsy revealed what happened to Kristil. She had been attacked from behind with a blunt object.
Bludgeoned to death in the head and rolled over and then stabbed in the heart.
With Dan now the prime suspect, the detectives wanted to know more about his relationship with Kristil. According to Kristil's parents, it wasn't good.
She said, well, I'm sleeping on the couch, Mom.
But you knew there was trouble in paradise, right?
Yeah, and especially in those last few months.
Kristil's family says those troubles were caused by Dan's fiery temper.
What set him off?
It could be anything, but it was usually if he was losing control.
Kristil's sister, Jenna Erickson, says she could always tell when Dan was angry.
His face would get really red when he was getting frustrated. I vividly remember seeing his face get red.
They had a thing where they'd go, okay, walk away. You need to walk away. And so, they were trying to manage it.
But in the weeks before her death, according to her parents, Kristil was getting ready to leave Dan.
She didn't want to have this marriage anymore.
She had decided that she needed to get a divorce.
As the detectives methodically built their case, more evidence was uncovered on Dan and Kristil's cell phones by digital forensic expert Randy Pilak, including texts from the morning of the murder.
So on Kristil's phone, we see text messages to Lars, Detective Martinez, and then a text message to Dan.
The one Dan said he received while driving to work about picking up one of the kids at school. But Pilak discovered those texts had been set on a timer. It was a new feature on the phone Kristil had.
Who do you believe pre-programmed those messages?
Dan Krug.
And he did it to do what?
To hide his actions.
Pilak says the messages were pre-programmed before Dan left the house.
And we believe Kristil is deceased.
That, for him, then, would establish an alibi that, well, I had already left and my wife is alive, right? She's texting me.
Correct.
All while Dan casually arrived at work. Pilak discovered more damning evidence from Dan's phone. Internet searches like, what happens when you're knocked unconscious? Do people really go unconscious when hit in the head? And how hard for head trauma to go unconscious?
All searches were the day before the murder. It was rather damning.
Just 2 days after Kristil had been murdered, detectives Martinez and King Sullivan felt they had enough evidence to charge Dan Krug with stalking and murdering his wife.
We began following him.
Coming up to the stop sign now.
How many cars are we talking about?
Probably 8 cars. We're like, that's him. He's alone in the car.
Hey, be ready to pop that once he gets it in the park.
We follow him all the way to the grocery store.
Pulling into King Super's parking lot.
We wait for him to park. We quickly converge on his car.
Go, 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 go. Show us your hands! Show us your hands! Hands on your face! Hands on your face! Hands on your face!
So we surround him, pull him out of his car, and tell him he's being arrested for the murder of his wife.
Under arrest.
I asked him just one question.
Do you want me to tell your kids that you killed their mother, or do you want somebody else to?
That's quite a line. That goes back to when he said he wanted to tell his kids that their mother was dead.
After I asked that question, he just said that he wanted to speak with his attorney and then looked away from me.
All right. Good luck.
And I shut the door and he went to the county jail.
You get one leg up and then kind of swing around.
I felt a huge relief. They got him. It felt like a burden had been lifted that he had been arrested.
And soon, Kristil's family would come face to face with the man detectives say murdered her.
He looked right at me and smiled at me.
And hear, for the first time, Dan's side of the story. When Deputy District Attorneys Kate Armstrong and Stephanie Fritz were assigned to prosecute Daniel Krug, they say they were struck by his downright stupidity in believing he could get away with murdering his wife by impersonating her ex-boyfriend.
The audacity with which he thought he could manipulate not only his family, his loved ones, but also the police department.
And some of this is sophisticated, is it not?
It's sophisticated, but not too sophisticated because we were able to figure it out.
The trial began in April 2025.
When he first came in, he smiled at me like he was saying, hey, thanks for being here for me. I believe my facial expression made it very clear that I was not on his side.
The prosecution laid out Kristil's final hours of life for the jury.
On December 14th of 2023, Kristil Krug started her day like any other day. She took her younger 2 children to school.
And when she returned,
Kristil pulled back into her garage. She gets out of the car when she is attacked from behind.
And did she ever see him approaching, do you think, or was this an ambush?
It was an ambush. She had 2 or 3 skull fractures. As she's laying on the floor bleeding, he pushes her over, gets over her, and stabs her just above her heart.
And why do you suppose he had to do that vicious last stab?
I think it was rage. I think it was control and power that he wanted to exert over Kristil.
Dan had been losing that control for a long time, say prosecutors. Their theory of the crime is that Dan sent Kristil those disturbing messages in an attempt to drive her closer to him and not leave, hoping she'd see him as her heroic protector.
It was not working. The stalking was not leading her back to him. I think it then turned to, I'm still losing her, kind of a, if I can't have you, nobody can.
The prosecution says that in the last days of her life, Kristil had begun to suspect that her stalker was possibly her husband.
We know from Dan's own interview that she confronted him and said, I can't rule you out as the stalker.
She said that right to my face. That she wanted to know if it was me. And I told her no.
He felt the walls closing in.
Closing in. He was going to lose Kristil anyway. He was going to be exposed as the stalker. So he did that last fatal act and murdered her.
Prosecutors say Dan tried to outsmart investigators, pre-programming those text messages on Kristil's phone before he left the house, assuming he wouldn't be caught.
Were we not able to discover that that was a delayed send text, it would have appeared as though Kristil was still alive when he left the house.
At trial, the long list of digital evidence against Dan was laid out. The threatening texts, the emails, the internet searches. Also included that photograph of Dan arriving at his office, attached to a menacing email seemingly sent by Anthony Holland to Kristil. But there was one problem, according to the state's digital expert.
Who took this picture, do you believe?
Dan. Dan took this picture.
Pilak discovered that the phone which snapped that photo was in selfie mode, using a timer. A fact that Kate Armstrong reminded the jury about in her closing argument. That's when the judge allowed cameras into the courtroom.
The phone was propped on the back of this vehicle next to him. The defendant took this photograph and then he sent it to his wife.
We respectfully disagree with the prosecution in this case.
Defense attorney Philip Geigel argued the murder investigation was poor. The blunt object used on Kristil's head and the knife used to stab her were never recovered by police. The defense also zeroed in on the fact that Kristil's phone was not tested for fingerprints or DNA.
Why not the phone? The prosecution wants to believe, well, there may not be a lot to be found there. Well, you won't know if you won't try, but...
Geigel said other forensic tests supported his claim that Dan is innocent.
They submitted the chest swabs, and you know whose DNA wasn't there? The person who lived in the house, the person who ate in the kitchen with them, the person who shared the living room. That idiot right there. There is absolutely no physical evidence on Mr. Krug's clothing. There's no blood found on that car, inside or out. It's searched 3 times.
In week 3 of the trial, the jurors began deliberations. After a day and a half, verdicts were reached.
Please rise for the jury.
Judge Priscilla Lowe read the verdicts.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of count number 2, stalking extreme emotional distress.
Krug was also found guilty of stalking with credible threat and criminal impersonation.
Guilty, 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 guilty. And at that point, I think I started breathing again.
Krug was later sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole on the murder charge and an additional 9.5 years for the stalking and impersonation counts. But right after his conviction, in a video call from jail,
How are you?
Been better.
Daniel Krug told his family that the jury got it wrong, saying the real killer remained at large and that his children could be the next targets.
I need them safe. I don't know where or who did this, where he is or who he is. I need my children out of Colorado.
As Daniel Krug began serving his life sentence, he continued making video calls to his parents and brother in the days immediately after his conviction. The man who viciously murdered his wife, terrorized his own children, and lied to everyone was seeking sympathy from his side of the family.
I'm probably sleeping like 16 hours a day because of the depression. I sleep, I read, and I cry. That's about it.
Okay.
Despite overwhelming digital evidence against him, Krug fell back to his old ways, lying to his loved ones, now claiming he was wrongly convicted.
They never produced a single piece of hard evidence.
His brother Jeremy gave Krug a much-needed reality check that the foundation of the family's loyalty had started to crack.
Support is dwindling. You know, mom and dad want to believe you very much. I want to believe you very much. Right? There's a lot that's come out. And as imaginative as I can be with finding explanations and ways to theorize how that, you know, this or that could have been the reality, some of it is beyond even my creativity.
The case that ended with a murder had begun with stalking and criminal impersonation of Anthony Holland, which begs the question, what if Detective Martinez had acted on the information Kristil and the private investigator had uncovered?
They should have found me right away. They should have found me, they should have came to my house, they should have approached me, they should have talked to me.
But Detective Martinez chose not to call, telling us he didn't have enough evidence to do so and was concerned a phone call could exacerbate the situation.
Is this something where you've kicked yourself about this?
This case has haunted me since it occurred. And the outcome of this case has haunted me for the past 2 years.
And if you could get in a time machine, perhaps you make that call today.
Absolutely.
And Kristil's parents sympathize with Martinez and believe their daughter was doomed no matter what the outcome of his investigation.
Inevitably, I think he was going to kill her. When someone sets their mind to do something like that, and that's what the plan was, I don't think that would have stopped the murder from happening.
Kristil's death has left a hole in the lives of those who experienced her love and joy for life.
I've had lots of other girlfriends, and I've never been in love with anybody else like her.
She was the love of your life.
Yeah.
Jenna hopes her sister Kristil's story will serve as a cautionary tale.
If it can help just one other person who's in a dangerous situation like she was in, that it gives them the strength to make a move, because it can escalate, and it can escalate really, really fast.
What was lost when she was taken from us?
Her light, you know,
like.
That's a tough one to talk about because there's so much. I wanted to jump out of that car and say, hey, Papa.
Lars still passes his time restoring parts for vintage cars. That father-daughter hobby is now being passed down to Kristil's children.
They're in here, they run that same electric screwdriver and they can tear a carburetor apart.
So in that way, you're honoring her memory, aren't you?
Well, that's the whole idea. Yeah, that's the whole idea. She would get such a kick out of seeing the kids doing the stuff that she was involved in.
I look at my grandkids and I find a moment of peace because I see her.
Welcome back to Post Mortem. I'm your host, Anne-Marie Green, and today I'm joined by 48 Hours correspondent Peter Van Sant and journalist Sheila Flynn. We are discussing the murder of Kristil Krug, a Colorado mother of 3. Sheila, you actually reported on this case for the Daily Mail, and you were also in the courtroom during the trial. So we're going to get into that, and we're really, really appreciative that you're here to give us your perspective on this case.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. Hopefully I can help.
And Peter, it's always great to have you here with us to break down this 48 Hours episode here on Post Mortem.
Yes, in honor of the Daily Mail, I'll say hello and welcome, Sheila.
That's your best British accent?
It's pretty good. I lived there for a while, so I'm all right.
It's better than mine, so we'll take it. So before we get into it, a reminder to everyone, if you haven't actually listened to this 48 Hours episode yet, head on back to your podcast feed. You'll find the full audio version of this in your feed right below this podcast. So go take a listen and then come on back for this conversation. So in December of 2023, Kristil's husband, Dan Krug, requested a welfare check on his wife, who wasn't responding to his text messages or his phone calls. Krug also told police that there was an alleged stalker that had been threatening them. When police arrived at the couple's home, they found Kristil dead in the garage. An autopsy later revealed that she had been bludgeoned to death in the back of the head, and she'd also been stabbed in the heart. There was a tremendous amount of police body cam footage from the crime scene for this case, and we use it a lot in the hour. And we see also just how emotional Krug was at the scene. Peter, when you watched that video, what did you think about his behavior at the scene?
I had never heard anything like that before. Here was a man you could hear before you saw him on these body cams. He was shouting and wailing as he ran down the street. It seemed so unnatural. And by the time he got in front of that house, and he was bent over and he was retching and making all of these sounds. It was an extraordinary performance, and we know now it was a performance, but it was completely over the top.
You know, I first viewed it actually sitting just feet behind Krug himself, who was sitting as a defendant in court at the trial. And, you know, Peter used the word performance. It seemed so much like a performance to me, just very overblown, not asking why, just almost seeming like he was trying to make himself seem scattered, like he didn't know what to do as he wailed. And it was really interesting to watch him watch that without any reaction as he was on trial for Kristil's murder.
I'm glad that both of you guys said that, because when I watched the video, I felt like I was judging him, but I just wasn't convinced with his behavior, the way he was sort of hunched over. And then we see that he's actually with a victim's advocate. Her name is Heather Ates. So she's seen people in situations like this many, many times. And we want to play for the listeners here some unaired footage from, Peter, your interview with her. And she talks about when she actually first started to suspect Krug.
The car ride from his house to the police department seemed like an eternity. And it felt as if something had switched. I was starting to look at him a little differently, especially since he was very adamant about telling the children. And he wasn't asking any other questions. He wasn't asking, where was she? What happened? And I turn and I look at him and I get this weird feeling. And it's a feeling of, are you really crying? Are you really, is this happening? Did you do this? You didn't. No, you didn't do this. Heather, you watch too many 48 Hours episodes. You're watching too much TV. This man has lost his wife. Why are you thinking that? But it was a gut instinct.
How interesting. But Peter, it's not just a gut instinct. He's not asking any questions about what happened to his wife?
Yeah, bizarre behavior. And she followed her instincts, which was great. Heather has a lot of wisdom in all of this. At one point, she said, he'd really settled down. Then he started to make this very strange whimpering sound. And she felt it was invented, that it just wasn't genuine.
So to bring people some of the background that we already know about if you watch The Hour, for months before her death, Kristil had been receiving threatening text messages and photos that appeared to be coming from an ex-boyfriend, Anthony Holland. Kristil brought her concerns to Detective Martinez, who at the time chose not to contact Anthony. He said that they were compiling enough evidence against him to actually obtain an arrest warrant. You both interviewed Anthony. What was your impression of him?
He was a very down-to-earth individual. There's a sadness about him. Kristil was somebody that he deeply cared for. They'd met in high school, but they were such different people. Kristil was this intellect, a truly genius-level intellect. An engineering future awaited for her. She was very ambitious. She was going to go to university. And Anthony, on the other hand, had no plans. He had no academic interests. These two split up, and it haunted him. He just felt like a big part of his life was missing.
Anthony is just very, very earnest, very honest, genuine, soft-spoken. And he just really loved Kristil. And when he described to me, they had met, they were both working at JCPenney's as teenagers, and he described their first date and their first kiss as magical. And it almost sounded like he was recounting scenes from a teen movie. And when I saw him testify at her trial, he was so anxious. He was clutching fidget toys, and you could tell he was really trying to do Kristil's memory well up on the stand, as well as stand up for himself. And he told me that he stared down, and I could see this, that he stared down Krug at the defense table, kind of going, man, you tried to frame me for murder. And he thanked me later after I ran an interview with Anthony about his past and Kristil. He thanked me for sharing her story as well as his, because it was his great love.
So seeing as, she had been his great love, Sheila, had Anthony actually contacted her over the years?
He had, I think in that way, sometimes you reach out with what ifs, etc. He sent a few messages, I believe the last, I think in 2016, just seeing how she was doing, nothing malicious or anything.
He had kind of a rock solid alibi. He literally and figuratively had the receipts.
Yeah, it's an incredible twist in this story that on the day that Kristil was murdered, he'd gotten up and he now thinks this voice in his head was Kristil sending him a message. He got this urge to go to a Kohl's department store and to buy a sweatshirt. And when I did the interview with him, I didn't realize he was wearing that very sweatshirt, and he had the receipt, and it proved that he was 500 miles away in Utah and could not have been in Colorado, not in the area at all, not in the neighborhood, to have committed this murder. And he thinks somehow Kristil's spirit helped save him, exonerate him in this case.
Wow. So more and more often with these cases, though, we are able to use surveillance footage or body cam footage, but it's not often that we have so much of the victim before the crime. In the hour, we see Kristil's interview with police when she's reporting that someone is stalking her. She seems to be taking all the right steps to protect herself and her family. Do you think that she would have maybe eventually uncovered the truth, that it indeed was her husband behind these threatening text messages?
I think she absolutely would have. She was so smart, and it was so frustrating to see her in that footage talking to the detective with everything laid out before him. I mean, she had spreadsheets and color-coded files and mountains of evidence, and he joked that she had done his job for him, and she had. I mean, she did everything. And she had even told her stepmom's sister, I can't even rule out my husband.
This is someone used to using the scientific method to solve problems. And she had done that looking at the facts of this case. And we know now, because Dan Krug, whether this was a slip up or whatever, he actually admits during the course of one of these interviews that she had mentioned to him that he could be the stalker. And think about that, because it wasn't that long after she revealed that to him that she ended up being murdered.
Mm-hmm. I mean, she was petrified as well. She broke down in tears in a parking lot to her mother once. She was, re-upping her shooting skills. She was arming herself. This was all discussed in court when they were outlining witnesses on the stand as well as the prosecution. So to know that she was in fear and literally carrying a gun at the time of her death and just always looking over her shoulder and still died, it was really tragic and infuriating.
Dan was aware that she had armed herself. When she was attacked and authorities came into that garage, her gun was inside her purse. She may have felt a little bit of safety going into that garage. Dan obviously knew the garage. He knew her habits, and he was able to ambush her. And all of that gun training and all that preparation ended up being for nothing because he got to her first.
You mentioned that she had mentioned that she couldn't rule out her own husband. Most people don't say that about, their partner. I'm kind of curious about how Kristil's family felt about Krug. Did they give you any indication as to whether or not they liked him or not?
They did in the interview. Her mother, Linda, in particular, didn't really like him from the beginning, and she just had a bad feeling about him. He was very awkward in family gatherings. He, at times, could be quiet. And I asked them, did you ever just mention it to her that you were concerned about it? They said, no, she's very smart. We wanted to leave that decision up to her as to who the person, her partner in life would be. But from the very beginning, it just didn't feel right to them.
They said in court that they were aware that the marriage was disintegrating. And I just think what united them in the weeks running up to Kristil's death was this stalker. I mean, there was family testimony during trial that at a family birthday party in the weeks before Kristil's murder, Dan was really playing up the stalker angle. He kept looking out the window in case the stalker might be surveilling them or in the vicinity. And I just think that his behavior, looking back now, must anger them so much more, seeing that deceit.
I want to talk about the footage of Krug's police interrogation. We see the moment, really, where the tables turn on him, where police reveal that Anthony has an alibi, and I want to play a clip from the show.
What if I told you that we had already spoken with Anthony, and there's no way that he was in town today?
I have nothing. my children home.
What are you terrified of?
If it wasn't him, who was it?
What gets me in all of this is I covered the Lacey Peterson murder case many years ago, and at the time we did a story about deception and signs of deception. One of them is whisper talking. And you noticed it there. It's in that audio. It is dramatic. He's talking. All of a sudden, it just falls off. And you hear him speak in this whisper talk, which is for these psychological experts, a sign that he's lying and telling a story. The frustrating part in all of this, too, is that they had to release Dan after this interview, even though he was their number one suspect. And at that point, they were pretty convinced that he is the killer. He knew they were onto him. And that whisper talk just said it all to me.
You know, even throughout his police interviews that we saw during the trial, he was always presenting himself as completely harmless and non-threatening. He's very tall, very skinny. He was stooped, slouched on the couch, hunched over, moving gingerly, you know, holding a cup of coffee or water as if it was going to hurt him, just constantly putting out this vibe of I'm harmless, don't look at me. And even there, when he was still protesting his innocence, who could it be pretending to be afraid? It was all a facade.
Welcome back. Well, after a digital forensics expert traced the stalker's messages to Krug's office Wi-Fi and uncovered chilling searches on his phone, like, do people really go unconscious when hit in the head? Police move in to arrest him. It's rare that we see this moment, the hands up, you're under arrest moment, but we actually get it from multiple angles here.
We get it from 6 different angles. This is like a Hollywood movie at this point. And as more and more local law enforcement get into the body cam technology, we're seeing incredible moments like this unfold before our eyes. The tragedy, he was out at that supermarket because his daughter was going to be performing in the Nutcracker that night, and they wanted to get some flowers. On the day of the murder, Dan insisted to police that he wanted to be the one who told his 3 children that their mother was dead. Well, at the time of arrest, you flip the script here, and Detective Martinez, who had such enormous frustration during the course of this investigation and some self-doubt whether he should have acted earlier to pursue Anthony Holland, reach out to him earlier. He finally had a moment where he's looking at him and he says, basically, hey, you want me to tell the kids that you murdered their mother or someone else? And it was, I'm paraphrasing there, but it was such a powerful moment there. And I felt good for the detective that he finally got one jab of the sword at this creep.
Absolutely. Let's go to the trial. No cameras were allowed in the courtroom until closing arguments. But Sheila, you were there in person for pretty much most of the trial.
Mm-hmm.
What was Krug's demeanor like? And was their family there to support him through the trial?
There was, his demeanor was very similar to how it was in police interviews and on that footage, where he stooped over, he moved slowly, presenting himself as harmless, meek, sitting there quietly at the defense table. His older brother was there for much of the trial. His elderly father was one of the last witnesses called, and he and his elderly mother were there for the verdict as it was read. His brother seemed shell-shocked when he addressed the judge. But Kristil's family, meanwhile, was there right behind the prosecution every day of the trial, active, engaged, just supporting her every step of the way.
The prosecution's biggest hurdle in this case was really the lack of DNA evidence tying Krug to the murder. The murder weapon was also never recovered, and investigators didn't find Kristil's blood on Krug's clothes or in his car. That is something you would expect when someone has, a stab wound. So it begs the question, just how is it possible to have no DNA evidence in a case like this where there's clearly a lot of blood?
Well, for all the mistakes that he made, perhaps it's blind luck in his case, it is something that, the prosecutors, and Sheila knows this very well, they all want a CSI moment in a case like this. The DNA, her DNA found in his car to really lock this down for jurors. But in this case, there just wasn't that.
And, that was a cornerstone of the defense, really, that there was no DNA. And how could that be? I mean, investigators were told that by his children, that he was wearing the same clothes that morning that he was when he came after she was murdered. So truly, how did he manage it? But I always wondered, Krug worked for the Department of Health here in Colorado. Who knows what he had access to? And when you think about it, even though he made a number of really elementary and unbelievable mistakes when it came to digital evidence or emails or phones, he did have a lot of time to plan this over a matter of months as he was carrying out that stalking campaign.
Well, let's talk about the digital evidence. I don't know when people are going to learn, like your Google searches will become part of the case against you.
The Google searches, first off, were incredible, where he was asking about, basically, I'm paraphrasing, what does it take to knock somebody out? And if you strike somebody on the back of the head, which of course is what happened to his wife, when they were able to determine that messages had been sent from his company Wi-Fi system, that is as good as a fingerprint. Who else could have done that? Now, the defense tried to say, well, the person that was stalking him may have been in the building at the time, and that's how this occurred. But they really had him on that. Also, they were able to determine that there was a iconic picture in the course of this where the alleged stalker had taken a photograph of Dan as he was getting inside a vehicle. Well, their digital expert was able to determine that picture had been taken on Krug's phone in selfie mode on a timer, and they were even able to figure out the bumper that was used to hold the phone to take that photograph.
It would be laughable if it hadn't involved the loss of a life. It's just astonishing. He bought a burner phone, but with a gift card that was registered to himself. He also, in one of the really wow moments of the trial, on October 2nd, when he sent a text, one of the threatening stalker messages to Kristil, she didn't answer. And it was the first stalker message he sent. And when she didn't answer, he clearly was worried that the message wasn't getting through. So he texted his own cell phone, test, and then responded to that text with his cell phone to the burner, yeah. So, he absolutely kind of condemned himself with that interaction.
Clearly. And a jury finds him guilty. He's found guilty of first-degree murder as well as stalking and impersonation. Sheila, what was the reaction like in the courtroom when the verdict was read?
On Krug's side, his parents, his mom slumped into his dad. A supporter put a hand on her back. They were just clearly in disbelief and bereft. On the other side of the courtroom, people were tearful for different reasons. They later spoke about how they felt this was some semblance of justice for Kristil.
After he was convicted, we get more fascinating video, and we include this in the hour, of a jailhouse call that Krug makes to his family. We want to play for you now an extended clip of that call that was not in the show.
We are in a digital and monitored age. They never produced a single photograph of me with phones. They never produced a single photograph of me buying anything. They never produced a single piece of hard evidence. Just identity theft. That's it. That's it. And we're in a world today where that's enough. DNA exoneration doesn't mean because someone can do things with a cell phone. Not a single photograph, not a single drop of blood, not a single scrap of DNA, not a single recording. Identity theft is all it takes to destroy somebody.
This almost sounds like an attorney performing closing arguments. It's quite dramatic with all those pauses and such.
They don't have that hard physical evidence, but the evidence that was presented was compelling to this jury and I think to the community.
You know, you could tell that his brother who got up, Jeremy, who spoke at trial during victim impact statements, you could tell that he was caught off guard, that he still had no idea how to handle this, because the point he made was that the family hadn't been privy to all the evidence until it was presented at trial, that they were holding on to a glimmer of hope. That hope had been very quickly shattered once they saw the case that was presented. And his brother also expressed anger at Dan for doing this to his family and putting them through it, and talk about driving his elderly parents home as they collapsed against each other in the car. So not only did he put his children through it, now he's putting his parents and extended family through it, and continuing to do it is galling.
So Dan Krug, he is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole on the murder charge, and an additional 9.5 years for the stalking and impersonation counts. And Sheila, you were talking about the victim impact statements at sentencing, and Kristil's sister-in-law also got up and made a victim impact statement, and she talked about what the children will have to deal with.
She did. She actually read out statements from the kids themselves who spoke of their grief. And it was not just Kristil's sister-in-law and the children speaking. It was a long line of friends and family members, whether they were school friends of Kristil's or friends she'd met in adult dance classes or cousins, relatives, siblings. Everyone spoke of what a bright light she was, how smart, how quick, how she would amuse them with self-deprecating humor. And you could see how much Kristil touched so many people's lives and how angry they were that she was so needlessly stolen.
Yeah. How's Kristil's family doing?
They are, they're such incredible people. Lars, Kristil's dad, is Norwegian. He's from a family of engineers. Kristil followed in that tradition. In that workroom they have at the house, where he has these old vintage cars, they used to work on them together. Lars can rebuild an original Corvette carburetor. He's a brilliant guy. He misses her so desperately as he looks around that shop. He can hear her voice. He can see her there. They're trying to continue that tradition with the children. Lars is. And he's desperate and will never let her memory die.
The kids, the oldest is about 16 now. And, you know, what they do have around them is a very large and loving extended family. And the crowds who stood up for Kristil for victim impact statements were just, I think, the tip of the iceberg. And the judge even acknowledged at sentencing what a pleasure it was, despite being an awful, tragic, and bittersweet circumstance, to get to know about Kristil and her family. So I guess despite this horrific situation, the kids are lucky in that regard to have all of them around her, all the people who turned up at the trial for Kristil and the many others out there.
Absolutely. It's a community that they will need moving forward. And it makes me feel at least a little good to know that they are well loved and well protected and supported. Well, Peter, Sheila, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Anne-Marie.
Thank you.
If you like this episode, please rate and review us on Apple Podcast or on Spotify.